Hopefully everybody's ready to have maybe a bit of a cooldown from that last topic. For those who are watching on YouTube and not necessarily seeing things in chronological order, we just got done talking about Texas again, which is one of the most infuriating things to consider for me, outside of talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene, who happens to represent my district, ostensibly. And it's an infuriating thing to deal with. Like, this whole conversation about people's rights and bringing back things like McCarthyism and stripping away people's rights to bodily autonomy and integrity. These are infuriating topics to talk about, and I know they get people angry, and they get me very upset. So how do I stay sane? I get that question in my comment section a lot. Sometimes people will send me messages on Twitter. And the long answer is the short answer is lots and lots of video games and taking time off for myself. But there are also some concepts, like some fundamental ideas that I've latched onto that make it easier for me to continue doing what I do, despite knowing that it's never going to end. First of all, 314 Nikki the Envy Fool, has recently redeemed some points for an Ara, you fucking monster. Secondly, before I talk about that topic, though if you see the video title after this is up, you'll already know what it is. Let's go ahead and get into the fan art section real quick. The first one we have here is from Angst Queen. It's a little sketch they did during the stream. Looks like they were in the middle of math homework, and then just a Neko Suris going pog, 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 pog. I guess we can get pogs in chat for that one. And then the next bit of fan art we have here is from Neko Scarlet. They said, they are happy for you to use this as you please. Well, currently, we are using it to showcase the lovely artwork to everyone else on stream as that little hit of dopamine. Though ideally, this particular episode will not be anywhere near as infuriating as other ones, because we're talking about something not positive, but potentially a light in the darkness for some people who haven't familiarized themselves with this idea yet. And with that said, thank you very much, Juventalone, for redeeming your points for an oh well. As always, thank you all for your fan art submissions, and let's go ahead and just talk about the long defeat. I am sure that somebody here, especially if you are a fan of Lord of the Rings, are at the very least familiar with the concept of the long defeat. Let's go ahead and talk about what that is. And this is one of the things that I hold on to that keeps me sane, aside from the other things that I do to keep me sane, like going on to Sunset City and talking about blue hedgehogs, or making gaming episodes over on the Neko Suris channel, or just spending time with my loved ones. The concept of the long defeat is a phrase to say a battle is potentially impossible, but still noble. Speaking of impossible but still noble battles, Jesus fucking Christ, Juventalone. Okay, fine, I guess we have to do it now. Juventalone, thank you very much for redeeming your 50,000 channel points, putting me at channel point gunpoint in the middle of trying to talk about a very deep subject. To say something cringy as hell. Oh, whoa. Oh, whoa. I hate you, and I hope you understand that you'll be getting a call from my Geneva Convention lawyers for your war crimes. Jeebus. Anywho, that bit of cringe out of the way. The long defeat is a phrase denoting an apparently impossible but noble battle. The expression kind of comes from J.R.R. Tolkien, at least the modern ways that we use the expression. It comes from Tolkien. And he used it in The Lord of the Rings to refer to the long struggle against the evil forces of Morgoth and later Sauron. I actually have the bit right here where it's talked about. Thank you very much, Konami Kachia, for the follow. But, to quote from Lord of the Rings, "Your quest is known to us," said Galadriel, looking at Frodo, but we will not here speak of it more openly. You are not Yet not in vain will it prove. Maybe that you came to this land seeking aid, as Gandalf himself plainly purposed, for the Lord of the Galadrim, or Galadrim, I cannot pronounce Tolkien, I'm sorry, is accounted the wisest of the elves of Middle-earth, and a giver of gifts beyond the power of kings. He has dwelt in the west since the days of dawn, and I have dwelt with him years uncounted. For ere the fall of Nargothrond, or Gondolin, I passed over the mountains, and together through ages of the world we have fought the long defeat. Now, what is this referring to? Well, in Lord of the Rings, they know that for the most part, the evils that they are fighting against cannot be extinguished. You cannot get rid of people doing bad things. That's functionally impossible. But is it a bad idea to try to stop people from doing those bad things in the first place? Well, no. What's a practical example of this? When it comes to mortality, the long defeat is that eventually you will die. You will suffer a long defeat. Your entire life is existence and then non-existence, and there is no way around that. But does that mean that individual acts of self-preservation are wrong or not worthwhile? When you take a drink of water, is that worthwhile for you? It prolongs your life. When you sit down for a meal with your family, that prolongs your life and potentially your mental well-being. Is that worth it? Or is it completely in vain in lieu of the long defeat? When it comes to mortality, you face an impossible battle. You will die. There is no way around that. But the individual acts of self-preservation, the individual moments we have with people that we love, people that we care for, those have meaning to us. Largely, they are meaning we construct to ourselves, but they're no less noble in their subjectivity. Remember, the long defeat is a denotation of an apparently impossible but noble battle. So let's talk about what this means where my channel's concerned. Am I going to be able to stop every person who says that a woman should not have a right to choose when I make my content? No. I can't. It is impossible for me to change the minds of everybody in the world such that they allow for the coexistence of people in a way that does not harm them. It is impossible. But is it a bad idea to try? Well, if the emails that I get every few days from people who say that I've influenced them in some way, shape, or form are anything to go by, then no. It's not a bad idea to keep on fighting that fight, knowing that you will lose. I cannot eliminate Christian bigots. I cannot eliminate religious zealots. I cannot eliminate misogynists. But I can still argue against their ideas. And there is no reason for me to stop outside of my own fatigue. If anybody tries to tell you that you should not be doing a thing because you ultimately will fail, sometimes trying to operate, trying to succeed anyway, is worth it. Winning little battles is not always bad. Every time that you... I've talked about this before, but I have a slight... trigger warning for suicide stuff, but I have a slight problem with suicidal ideation. There are times where I think that I have just had enough, seen enough, done enough. I'm done. And it's time to be done. It's time to go. But I don't. I don't go. I don't disappear. And I'm not going to make the decision to do so. Because there are still things I want to do, and those things still have worth. And they are always going to have worth. Now, there is something to note here, and I'm sure there's going to be somebody who brings it up in the comment section who's familiar with Catholicism. But in accordance with Tolkien's Christian beliefs, he saw the phrase as applicable to all of human existence. who had been tainted by original sin since the fall of man, and would remain tainted by that original sin until the second coming. He said that since he was a Christian and a Roman Catholic, that he didn't expect history to be anything but a long defeat. But he did note that it contains several samples of a final victory. And again, while that concept may be influenced, at least for Tolkien, by Christian idealism, you don't have to adopt it in the same way. I'm an atheist, and I've still adopted the idea of the long defeat. There are several political ideas that seem impossible. At one point in the United States, same-sex marriage seemed impossible. I noticed that a chatter just pointed that out. At one point in the United States, equality between races seemed impossible, but we are inching ever so slightly there. We've come a long way on that front, though we still have ways to go. In the United States, it seemed impossible to do a vast number of things politically. And yet, those things got achieved. Things like women's suffrage. Things like emancipation. These were impossible battles once, up until the point where they weren't. Ultimately, most of these battles boiled down to a battle against bigotry, a battle against some type of oppression. You can't get rid of the idea of oppression. You cannot get rid of the idea of bigotry, but you can fight against individual types, concepts, and manifestations of those things in order to win, effectively, human rights for people. And I think that's worth it. Ultimately, don't fight fights that you do not have the mental strength to fight. Take time for yourself. Take time off as you need. Take time to process things instead of just running headlong and trying to blindly win whatever social justice battle you think is important that day. But understand that this is a fight that you will be fighting until you die, probably. It's a thing to accept. It's a thing to come to terms with, because there are people who get frustrated. There are people that get mad and say, this should have been a problem solved years ago. This should be a problem solved right now. Why isn't this solved right now? And they get angry and they lash out. And that anger is justified. Those manifestations are understandable. But it's a long battle. And the ultimate thing that it stems from is a thing that we will not be able to beat. But because this is a sprint, or because this is not a sprint, this is a marathon, it's better to take care of yourself. Take care of your loved ones. Make sure that you can function even as you engage in going to protests, or running for office, or convincing a family member that you have rights that they might not think you should have. All of those are battles you need to select. And you need to select them when they are healthy for you. Yeah, no, doomerism helps nobody. Engaging in, pessimistic fatalism isn't going to help anybody. You can be optimistic in face of fatalism. It's fine. It is very likely that you will still be fighting a battle for trans rights, even by the time you die. It is very likely that you will still be fighting battles against various forms of bigotry and oppression by the time you die. But you know what? That makes a better world for the people who come into the world after you, and if they take after the example that you've given of not giving in to apathy and nihilism when it comes to these particular fights, then they'll continue to make the world better for more people going forward. That's a net positive, despite the fact that the ultimate source of all of it will not go away. So hopefully that's a bit more of a positive message for people. I've been wanting to do a video talking about the long defeat and how that idea has stuck with me for a while, and this gave me an opportunity to do so. So hopefully this resonates with somebody. If it did, let me know in the comment section below. I want to hear from you. See if maybe this is a thing that's new to you, or a thing that you've already adapted and you just want to talk about how it's meant something to you. But aside from taking care of myself mentally, this is one of those things that I take solace in. It prevents me from suffering from a severe case of outcome dependence. That said, if you want to support the channel and what I do, you know how to do so, and as always, everyone, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. It really means a lot to me. If you want access to behind-the-scenes content for the channel, please consider checking out my Patreon. I do weekly vlogs over there, where I give real-life updates to what's going on behind the scenes on the channel, stuff that you don't really get over here, and even on Twitch. Patreon also helps the channel's stability a whole lot. Without Patreon, I wouldn't be able to do this at all. Especially with the kind of content that I do, neither YouTube nor Twitch are the most stable sources of income. If you are a $20 and up patron, then you will be featured on the ending slides as shown in the beginning of the end credits. If you want to catch the streams where all this content comes from, then consider heading over to Twitch and following. And if you want to continue watching over here on YouTube, maybe consider clicking one of the end screen videos. And once again, I want to thank you so much for spending your time with me over on my channel. I wouldn't be able to do literally anything that I'm doing over here on YouTube without each and every one of you. So, thank you.